Welcome to the AI argument. It's going to be a good one because my co-host Justin Collery is in very grumpy form.
I'm angry. I'm very angry,
We're
Frank.
both, yeah. I think are we both a little angry, which is going to make for a great show.
I think I'm angry, actually. I was having a pretty good Friday until I met you.
Yes.
It was all
Um,
going so well. I was easing myself into the weekend, and then we meet up as we do every week for a couple of minutes to discuss what's going on. And
and
you
I and
told
I
me,
bring some great news to the conversation that I think is going to uplift you and make you cheery, which is that the AI Act has been published in the official journal of the EU, which means that there will be an AI Act in force on the 1st of August, which is only 20 days away, which is fantastic news.
I can't believe you're happy about this. I really can't. It's I'm stunned. I'm so angry. Why is the EU getting involved with this? Like if the EU had been around when cars were invented, we'd still be riding horses. They would have regulated them out of existence before they even existed. Within 6 months, the EU Act will enforce prohibitions on practices posing unacceptable risk. Who decides? Who decides what unacceptable
Unacceptable,
risk is? Why are you deciding what's
unacceptable
unacceptable?
risk. I mean, I think they've got some pretty good definitions for unacceptable risk. Don't ask me what they are because I'm not going to be able to recite them from memory. But
I don't think they do
you know,
either.
I think they've done a pretty good thrashing out of this to get to where they are. And I'm going to be keeping a close eye on this. I'm going to be doing that through Barry Scannell on LinkedIn, which is where I heard about it initially. He does fantastic work in keeping us up to date on matters to do with with all legal matters to do with AI actually. But he's been saying that they're going to now be publishing a whole series of blog posts and podcasts and content on how the EU Act is going to impact all of us. And he's been doing some really great content about how, a lot of small businesses think this isn't going to affect them, but it is if they're using, ChatGPT or any of the AI tools that are out there. We're all going to have to think about how we're using them and what it means for our businesses.
Unbelievable. Why the EU, right? So far, in the last, I would say 3 months, the EU have made me angry 3 times in a row, which is bad form, right? So first we had, for those who aren't in the European Union, we had a directive to do with recycling and stuff like that. So every time I buy a can of Coke now, I pay an extra 25 cents. What the hell is that about? Like, I'm so angry about that because,
But is
yeah,
presumably it's not arbitrary. I'm guessing here that there's some kind of environmental concern here that the 20 cents is going to go towards fixing in some
it's a
way, shape, or
tax.
form.
It's just a tax, right? Because if it wasn't a tax, they'd take my recycling bin for free. But no, I still pay to have my recycling bin taken away, even though you can get 15 cent or 20 cent for every. Anyway, that drives me so angry. Then the second thing they did is now when you get a milk carton, which you don't have to pay the tax on, and you open it, right, to put the milk in your coffee, right, the piece of plastic is now attached at the top so that when you pour the milk out, it now sort of spills onto the cap, which used to come away from the bottle but doesn't anymore. And so instead of the milk going into your coffee cup, it spills all over the table, right? That's also an EU directive. What the hell are they doing that for? And now we've got the AI Act, which is they're regulating stuff which isn't even made in Europe anyway. So I don't know what the hell you're regulating this for because you've managed to make sure that we're not able to innovate in this area with all your bleeding regulation. Wait till the technology exists. Wait till
We'll
something
see.
bad happens and then regulate it. Don't go
We'll
regulate it
see.
before you even got there.
After our last EU argument, I went away and I I did some research and I found scientific papers saying that the EU regulation, that the EU Act, the EU AI Act, was indeed likely to cause a stifling of innovation. I also found a scientific paper which showed that the EU AI Act was actually likely to foster innovation. So so there are scientific papers out there arguing both sides of the coin. I think we'll see. I personally, as you know, I think it is a good thing, and I think that yes, I think there may, there will be some drawbacks, and there will be some areas where, because this is so new, it hasn't been thought through properly. There will be a pain factor of some level, but I think that the safeguarding against some of the uses of the technology will be well worth it, and I think the rest of the world will follow suit, and implement similar acts.
They're like a
But
company.
maybe we should get on to something that makes you less angry.
Well, I'm just going to finish on this, right? Because they're like a company who, I remember back in the dot-com boom, you could, 10x the value of your company just by putting E in front of it. So if it was Frank and Justo, right, it could be E Frank and Justo, and suddenly the company was worth 10 times as much as it was before. That's the European Union now saying, oh, AI is the big thing. We'll get in and regulate it so that we look relevant. How about you go and regulate social media and the impacts that it has on the mental well-being of children? I mean, that's
But
something that is real.
they're doing
And
but they're doing that too. They're doing some great work in that respect, and they're
brilliant.
really
Do
put
more of that, not so much the AI stuff. Go busy, go keep yourselves busy over there. That needs to be done. The AI stuff, don't worry about it yet. And you missed the boat. Where were you regulating, social media 20 years ago when all that started? Nowhere, because you have to
but
wait for
this
the problem to happen.
but
And
this is
then,
the great thing, isn't it? That they're getting in front of this now, so we won't repeat the mistakes of the past that we made with social media.
no, it's not great. Anyway, let's go on to something else. I just can't talk about it. I'm too upset.
So the next thing that we were going to chat about was something that actually across both of our radars, which is really interesting because it's not. I wouldn't have thought this was like a huge story or anything, and yet it popped up on both of our radars, and that was, I don't even know how to pronounce this company's name.
Lattice.
Lattice,
Lattice. The name of
Lattice.
the company.
Let's go with
Yeah.
Lattice. So the CEO, I think it was it the CEO, put out a blog post about how, you know what? Like, what was it about? It was basically about how AI were now being considered digital hires and would need similar processes as hiring a person. Am I getting that like some way close?
That's pretty much, I think that pretty well describes it. And it was going to give the AI, it was totally going to anthropomorphize the AI, because you would have AI employees and there will be procedures. And if you had an org chart, you'd have Justin, Frank, and then, Justo the AI or whatever it is over there. And they would have a whole process and everything set up to help them. Fantastic. You didn't like it, Frank?
So you love this. This is
Of course I
this
did.
is really interesting. Yeah. Okay. There was huge pushback on it. Did you see the pushback from
I
people?
did. I did. I'm okay. I'm maybe winding you up a little bit. I thought this was the most interesting story of the week. I don't know if it was good or bad.
Yeah.
You were quite reserved. For me, it was the most interesting story of the week because it got me to really deeply think about the future of work and think about the implications. So there was this story came out, and in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been in a number of meetings, in a number of town halls, and I've talked to people just anecdotally, literally on the street. And every single one of them that I've talked to is worried about their jobs. And every time you talk about AI, is AI going to come and take my job? That's what people worry about. And so this story here kind of brought that to a head. And I think that's why it got such a visceral reaction, because in the background,
Yeah.
mentally, this is just starting to bubble up in people's heads going, oh my God, is AI coming to take my job? Jesus, the HR software of all things now has an AI agent in it. Yes, it is going to take my job. I think that's why there was a lot of pushback.
Yeah. And I agree with you that it does raise really interesting questions. But I mean, I think the biggest problem here is that they were they're a little bit ahead of the curve, and they probably thought they were being really smart by kind of being ahead of the curve and getting ahead of the curve. But the reality is the technology right now isn't at the point where it needs to be considered at the same level as a human hire. I think when you boil this all down, I think what the CEO was getting at was, care and attention needs to be taken when you're implementing AI in an organization, which is absolutely true.
Mhm.
Because they're a HR company, I think she came at it from the perspective of a HR company, which is like, okay, so care and attention needs to be taken with AI. Oh, it's a bit like hiring a person. Let's do a blog post about how it's like hiring a person. And they're too early. Like they're too early because it's not like hiring a person. It's like implementing technology.
Yeah,
And as you say, the fear then around job loss just ignited a backlash against it. And on top of that, like that company seriously needs a comms person because, when I came across it first, I was tired. It was the end of the day. Somebody shared it in the Rise community and I read it and I just went, I don't know what this person is saying. So
yeah,
then then today you brought it up and I was like, oh yeah, I need to go back. I need to go back and I need to reread that. And I reread it and I was like, okay, I kind of get it now. But it was so badly communicated, so badly um conceived. It was poorly conceived and then really badly communicated. So but yeah, if you're paying attention in the AI world, it raises interesting questions about where we're headed, but I think
yeah.
that's the key point. It's where we're headed. It's not where we're at now.
True, right? So let's talk a little bit about where we're headed, right? Because that's really where it got me thinking, right? So that I'm very much on the techno optimist side, right? So I for one welcome our new AI overlords, and I think that there's a good chance that this is going to do all the work that we want it to do, right? But that's kind of an extreme view, right? And I might take that position for conversation's sake as much as or as a vision, that's a goal, even though we might never get there, right? But let's look at this logically, right? Because this is actually what this story did to me, right? So is AI going to take your job? In fact, is it going to take everybody's job? And there's only two possible outcomes to that. One is yes, it does. In which case, as humanity, needs to figure out what we do in that future, right? There's no point in you worrying about it because it's going to be everybody's problem, or it doesn't, right? And there's different forecasts for how many jobs this might take in the foreseeable future. And the low end would seem to be 5%. I saw a paper saying that maybe 5% of jobs over the next 5 or 10 years could be taken by AI. And I've seen 20% put out in papers. So let's just say 50%, right? Let's say AI in the next 5 or 10 years is going to take 50% of everybody's job. You have to look at AI then as a productivity tool, right? It's just made the 50% of people that remain working twice as productive as they were before. And you can use productivity as kind of a proxy for wealth, right? If you're twice as productive, as a nation, you're therefore twice as wealthy. So I would switch my analogies then, and I'd say, imagine you're in a household and you're making €5,000 a month, and then through some lucky thing, right, you suddenly have €10,000 a month. You're now twice as wealthy as you were before. You don't save the extra 5 grand, right? Expense always rises to meet income, right? You just spend the extra money, right? That's what happens. And and that will be the same in a world where half of the jobs are taken by AI and the world has become therefore twice as, wealthy or twice as productive. The other half will just end up doing other stuff, right? Because we're now more wealthy as a society, and therefore there'll be more opportunity to do different businesses which just don't exist now. And so for that reason, I would say whether either of those outcomes happen, don't be worried about it. We are going to be better off and more wealthy as a society as a result of this technology. And there's no point in getting worried. And people that sort of fearmonger and sort of stir it up to try and get people worried about it, they're doing it for their own ends. It's going to be okay. We're all going to make it. Relax, Frank. It's Friday. Don't worry. Like, the only thing that you should worry about is the EU trying to regulate it out of existence.
I see, I would argue that I would argue that it's the EU, it's things like the EU regulating that will ensure that the 50% are definitely looked after. And I can understand people's concern because if like if in a way, if we take the 50% example, in a way that's almost worse, because if it's everybody and we all have to figure out how to deal with it. But if it's 50%, it's uneven. And then we're looking at things that we've experienced in the past where maybe areas where industry has moved out of, and then those areas are really depressed and there are other areas that are still doing fine. And that's a problem if it's not regulated. And if we're not really making serious efforts to ensure that the wealth is distributed
That's not a
fairly.
regulation issue, though, Frank. That's a redistribution issue. That's a different
Yes.
problem.
Well, yes, but how do you redistribute if you don't regulate or create laws or, impose, like the large AI companies, or even just like large companies using AI, are not going to voluntarily create a fund to look after people who are left behind.
No, that's a government's job, and in many senses, you might say that they shouldn't. It's not their goal in the world is not to look after you. Their goal in the world is to create great AI. That's what they should do. And yeah, for sure, right? And
Oh,
because when you
sorry,
think
I
about
thought
it,
we were
it would
sorry.
be easy.
You mean the companies? You mean the
Yeah,
companies? Sorry, I thought you meant the government. I was like, wait, what?
no. So the AI the company's job is to make the best computer program they
Yeah,
can possibly make, right? That's their focus, and that should be their focus. And then you, me, and everybody else, we get a vote on who's going to go into government, right? It will be very undemocratic to have an AI company decide how you should be looked after, right? That will
yeah,
be, a very dystopian future. Instead, we
yeah,
have things called elections where we elect people and they decide how and again, I have to say, right, there is what you called tax. You tax companies and you tax people that work
yeah.
and you redistribute the wealth to people that need the money. That's how it works. It's worked for hundreds of years. It's a really good system. And you just need to do more of the same. That's not regulation. Regulation's a totally different thing. And so, not so much the regulation. And, what we're looking for is a social democracy where everybody sort of gets looked after and is treated with respect. And you can do both. And it's not the company's problem, it's the government's problem.
Yeah.
I'm just too grumpy. I'm sorry, Frank. One of those Fridays. One
Well,
of those Fridays.
while we're talking about jobs, last week we talked a lot about robotics and the use of AI, the junction of AI and robotics, and how we were seeing robots now actually having jobs, like genuinely having jobs in manufacturing and in warehouses. And we were talking about this issue of job displacement in terms of robotics, because they very much have a humanoid form and can literally come in and take the place of somebody. And again, we were having this argument about, well, yeah, that's all well and good as long as the people who are displaced are looked after. But then this week we saw an article that highlighted something that had not been mentioned in any of the other robotics articles that I'd come across, which was that there's actually a huge labor shortage for the types of jobs that these robots are actually fulfilling, which I thought was really interesting. I think there was a statistic about it. So one of the quotes was like, the gap is especially deep in manufacturing, where Goldman estimates there's a shortage of 500,000 people, set to grow to 2 million. So it's set to grow to a shortage of 2 million workers by 2030. And so proponents say that robots are filling jobs that are monotonous and dangerous. So I thought that was really interesting.
Isn't it brilliant, right? I mean, they're basically, remember Charlie in the Chocolate Factory? What did his dad do? Do you remember what he did?
No, no.
He put the tops on the toothpaste. He was the guy that made sure that the top was screwed on the top of your toothpaste correctly. That's what Charlie in the Chocolate Factory's dad did. And so these robots are taking those jobs. It's absolutely fantastic. There's another company that I just came across a couple of minutes ago called Chef Robotics. Fantastic. That's actually what made me think of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory thing.
Right.
So they have already in North America, in production, they say themselves, produced over 20 million meals, right? And they have these AI robots. I mean, I guess the AI is sort of vision to sort of identify where the robot should go. And they're just making meals and they're
Wow.
TV dinners basically, right? And they're shipping them out the door. But if you look in the video, they also have, they show you what the work is that the people use, and literally you got like a huge vat of peas, and somebody is grabbing a handful of peas and putting on a plate. Grab a handful of peas, putting on. Like, it is soul destroying work. It is literally putting the top on the toothpaste, and now they've got these robots. And what was entertaining to me as well, actually, it was quite a funny video, was, it wasn't supposed to be funny, but I was laughing, right? Do you ever see those? Do you ever see those? And it often happens normally around election time. In fact, when you've got politicians and they're coming into the local factory and they have one of those silly white hats on that's, to keep everything clean. They have the
Yeah.
same hat on the robots, which I thought was nice.
Aren't they aren't they hairnets? Is that
Hairnets,
like
yes. They had robot arm nets.
well, maybe were they using those robots with the living tissue, and had they maybe grown hair out of the living tissue on
Maybe,
the
maybe they did. I don't know, but it's very interesting. And I guess, these are the really boring jobs, but you could also imagine there's a lot of dangerous jobs. Think of mining,
yeah.
or think of, even, I don't know. There's lots of dangerous jobs in the world.
There was another video doing the round, which was a really interesting combination of humans and robotics. I don't know if you saw this one doing the rounds, where there was a worker somewhere in Asia controlling a robot stocking shelves in the US. Now, I thought that was really interesting. I didn't actually even verify if it was definitely real, to be honest. But the thing that I saw was pointing out that, like, yeah, there's a human involved right now, but presumably it's just training the AI to be able to do it itself in a very short space of
Right.
time.
I did. I saw that. And actually, also in similar news this week, I saw there's a company called, I think it's Xiaomi, I think is the name. They're a Chinese mobile phone manufacturer, and they make phones that are very similar to the iPhone or a top end Samsung phone. And this week, it wasn't clear to me if they opened the factory or if they're planning to open the factory. But certainly there will be a factory soon with 0 humans, not a single human in the factory. And
Wow.
materials will go in one side and mobile phones will come out the other side. And
Wow.
there's an interesting scaling law here, which is that if they get these robots, perfected, at the moment, again, everybody's scrambling around looking for the right solution. But let's say you hit on a good form factor, right? You turn the robots to building a factory to make robots. And then you get a factory that makes robots, and suddenly now you've got, and then you know what I mean? It's kind of like a multiplier effect.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
get a lot of robots very quickly doing a lot of work once you've hit on the winning formula. And so we're getting closer to that. That's going to be kind of an interesting development. And I see in Ireland, to that end as well, just this week in Louth, which is just a hive of tech activity, Louth, they had this country's first 3D printed house, which was
Oh,
cool.
wow.
Right. And it's a big robot arm that just prints out the house. And it's a similar type of idea. You can imagine that's not so much AI, but it's just you can turn robots to making buildings, to make factories that make robots, and on it goes.
That's mad. Yeah. It's I I'm thinking, sorry, I'm thinking about the AI, the open AI, their new five levels
Yes.
of AI. And the meme that I saw of it was the 5 levels of AI, but then someone had added, like, number 6, we're all turned into paper clips, referencing the whole thing of, like, a super intelligent AI, or not even a super intelligent AI, but a powerful AI that goes out of control and is asked to make paper clips and ends up turning the entire universe into paper clips. What did you make of the whole OpenAI 5 levels of AI?
Um, there's what nobody knows what's going on in OpenAI at the moment. There's something going on, and I don't know what it is. There was rumors this week that it had been nationalized. I don't believe that. Okay, but this all goes back to there's things going on, and it's very odd. And I've sort of given up speculating at this point on OpenAI.
Yeah.
Um, but we did see this week there was this Sense Nova 5.5, which was a Chinese company, and they had released a model which, on paper at least, it appears it's better than the OpenAI model, than GPT-4o. Then we have OpenAI this week is blocking access to their models, both through ChatGPT and through the API in China. And apparently they're going to follow up with North Korea, Iran. There's a list of countries that they're going to block access to. And then we had this 5-step ladder thing, which was an all hands meeting. So that's basically the entire company was showing this model. And to me, that sounds like a precursor to they're building up to release something new, and something that's so good that it's, again, we have the head of the NSA, or the head, we have a, part of the industrial military complex now on the board of AI. And this week, this was very interesting. Microsoft and Apple were supposed to have advisor, or sort of what do you call it, just observer status on the board,
Oh yeah.
and they both relinquished those. So they're not going to have observer status on the board. And they've said that the reason was because they said it was because of increased scrutiny from regulators. That horrible word again is just out to destroy my Friday. But actually, it was due to competition law. It was what they said. Again, I don't know what to believe anymore when it comes to OpenAI. And I think all you can do is watch it and then take whatever comes out. And, when it's real, it's real. And until then, nothing is real. So at the moment, as far as I can see, OpenAI have fallen behind. Why have they not released a new model? Why have they not even released the features that they have demoed already? Nobody knows. And until they do, you'd have to say that Anthropic are leading the way when it comes to AI right now, both in safety and in quality.
Yeah, I had some really good experiences with Claude Sonnet 3.5, where ChatGPT was failing me, and I just thought, well, I'll try Sonnet, and it powered through some stuff that ChatGPT surprisingly was not able to do for me. And then we've talked before about some of the stuff that they have not released, like their
Sora.
like Sora, exactly, yeah. And we've been seeing some really interesting stuff coming out of some of the other tools. Some of the other tools, like Runway version 3 is now here. And we've got the Luma Dream Machine is available. There's the Chinese one that I've forgotten the name of, Kling or something.
Yeah.
And there's been some cool stuff that people have been creating some cool stuff. You brought one to my attention for
McDonald's.
yeah.
McDonald's. Brilliant. So there was, I don't know what the guy's real name is. His Meta Puppet is his handle on Twitter. And he made an ad using all of these tools for McDonald's. And there was two things happened this week, right? It was a brilliant ad made completely with AI. So there was a guy and he was there with his computer, and he gets up and he leaves the room and his McDonald's burger is left there. And basically the computer opens up and eats the burger and whatever he's talking. And it's all made with AI. And the really, really important lesson out of this is look at what's going on in big companies, right?
Mm.
And then just we've got so many examples, and we've talked about loads of them. We had that ordering system, which just didn't work really well. We've had, Canada Airlines with its AI promising just bad implementations of chatbots, which is really easy to do, but they don't do it. You've got the company that we talked about, the HR company, Lattice, with just, again,
Yeah.
and it's so frustrating to me to see bad implementation of AI technology. It really, really grinds me. And here you see a really brilliant implementation with a single individual. And so the important lesson here is one individual with the right tools and the right motivation and the right skills can do a way better job in this new world than a multinational corporation. And that's a really important lesson for everybody to pay attention to. And I think what's going on is because this technology is so new, right? Because it's brand new, and we're all just trying to figure out what it can do. You have in these big companies a layer of management, and they don't use this technology day to day. They don't really know what it can do, right? And they're, and these big companies tend to have a lot of guardrails, and they're trying to, they're set up for old technology. So when this new thing comes along, the people who do know what they're doing don't have the latitude and the freedom to get the best out of it. Whereas somebody on their own with imagination and time can do an incredible job. And the McDonald's ad was brilliant. And I do want to hear what you thought about it. And then also there was a guy called Dave Clark who's making a sci-fi movie. And I love sci-fi movies. And he's going to make it entirely in AI. And he's going to publish his journey as he does it. And he's going to release checkpoints. And it looks brilliant, like really good. So you can have one person can make an entire movie as opposed to an entire studio. And I think both of those for me on the creative side, fantastic, brilliant. What was your view on them?
Yeah, so I guess I have two different views. One on the McDonald's ad. I mean, the obvious comparison here is the Toys R Us ad that we talked about in a previous
Yes.
episode. So, we talked a lot about the problems that the Toys R Us ad was plagued with because AI, just has AI to video just has some limitations right now. And the guy who created the McDonald's ad very cleverly tried to overcome a lot of those issues. So yes, he had a central human character, but you saw him silhouetted, you saw him walking away. You only really got one clear view of his face. And so he just got around that issue of needing the character to be consistent from scene to scene very, very cleverly. I did notice the burger did change from scene to scene, but
Yes.
it's not quite as important that a burger remains the same as a person remains the same, I guess. But what I thought was really interesting was there was also another ad brought to my attention, which was, it was an ad for Volvo. But like
Yes.
the McDonald's ad was not commissioned by McDonald's. The Volvo ad was not commissioned by Volvo. These are being made by people who just want to prove what AI can do. So they are free from the constraints. Like that McDonald's ad would never be a McDonald's ad because it doesn't fit within their brand. It doesn't make sense for the brand. I would love to know what these brands make of this occurrence now because people can, like you said, one person can create an ad using AI tools. It will be really interesting to see how brands react because are they going to be delighted with the free advertising? Are they going to be delighted that there are ads out there that don't have to constrain to their brand but still get the message out and get the message out possibly to areas that they wouldn't normally reach? Or are they going to be more like, ooh, this does not fit with our brand. People are not going to be able to tell it's not official. We need to stamp these out. That's what I'm really interested to see what the brand reaction is to these.
These people drive me mad, right? Because you're totally right. So let's say, to drive home my point, right? Let's take the Volvo ad, right? So the Volvo ad was again very professional looking. I thought it was brilliant. Looks like, I mean, it looked like a fairly generic ad, right? For any sort of car ad from the last 10 or 15 years. And it had a Volvo, which wasn't a real model, right? But just looked like a lot like a Volvo, and some plants that sort of grew up, sort of crossed between a car ad and an ad for an oil company that wanted to pretend it wasn't destroying the environment. That's right. And um, and so if an outside person does it, and I think Volvo or McDonald's or anybody else are getting free advertising, they'll go brilliant, love it, creative, fantastic. But if an internal person went to make the same ad, right, then the reaction is going to be, oh, well, those plants aren't sustainable, and it doesn't fit in with our brand identity. We only use begonias here at Just Corp. we don't endorse the use of firs and coniferous trees in the southern, and
But
it's
also,
like,
I mean, but also relatively importantly, if it's an internal ad, it kind of does need to look like an actual Volvo model. I mean, the lights need to be in the right place, or the bumper can't be changing from scene to scene.
the
Or
point I'm making is that you're sort of right, but the point I'm making is there's enormous opportunities
yeah,
for smaller companies and individuals to
mhm,
make an enormous impact right now,
agreed,
because
agreed.
the people who work in the companies are not going to be allowed to do the same things. And so we have a golden period of maybe 2 years, or I don't know, but
Yeah,
you have this period where you as an individual can move way faster than an enormous corporation, and the tools at your disposal will create content which is better than anybody with any amount of money has been able to produce in the last 20 years. What a time. I mean, that's
very,
that's the real lesson.
yeah, very true, very true. We are over time, but let's finish up on the last story that I think we're both in agreement that this is just brilliant. This is just, I don't think there's going to be any argument over this one. And this is the AI chatbot system, which basically what they do is they use a telephone system to figure out if a call is very likely to be a scammer. And if it is, they reroute the call to an AI chatbot that then pretends to be often an older person who's a little bit fuzzy on details, and then keeps the scammer on the line for as long as humanly possible. And the idea is
Brilliant.
based that, like, it's very difficult to combat these scammers, and often the person who's making the call is just like a person in a call center. They're not the problem. The problem is whoever's organizing the entire operation. And so it's very difficult to combat these scammers. And this genius idea combats them by tying as many of them up for as long as possible, um, and just basically beating them at their own game. I mean, I just thought this was absolutely genius.
Our roles have reversed, Frank, because I think, okay, what I do think in a non AI world, this is brilliant. I used to do this myself, by the way. I used to respond to spam. I used to say, "Oh, Prince, really? Let's tell you more," just to tie them up, waste a bit of their time. But in this case, this could be your paperclip problem, right? So you could get a race condition whereby the scammers use AI to send out the emails, and then the receivers use AI to respond to the emails, and then you end up having this enormous quick fire conversation between scammer AI and good AI, and then as that's going on, power stations of the world just go as all the energy in the world is used up by scammers and anti-scammers emailing each other as fast as they
I
can,
mean,
just trying to waste each other's time.
that's a very good point, and that's a very good point in terms of social media at large. I mean, LinkedIn have when I go to send a message to someone and I click into the message, there's an AI written message there that I have to manually delete in order to send the message that I want to. So, even social media platforms like LinkedIn are kind of saying, "Oh yeah, let AI write this for you. Let AI write this for you. Why don't you let AI start your post for you?" So yeah, pretty soon, is the entire internet just going to be AI bots talking to AI bots? Is our yeah, as you say, are our emails going to be completely are our email tubes going to be completely clogged with AI talking to AI? Well, you've just put a downer on that brilliant story. Just so
Ah, but great though. It was
that's a
great.
great
Well,
note to end
I
on.
dragged you to my level of experience today, Frank. you,
Ah,
you ruined my Friday about 45 minutes ago, so I'm delighted I could return the favor.
Brilliant. Well, on that note of ending the internet as we know it, it's been a pleasure as always, and I guess I'll chat to you for more arguments next week.
Frank, talk to you next week. See ya.